Hello and welcome to my review for Thanksgiving 2011. This is Age of Empires 3 for PC and Mac. This was developed by Ensemble Studios and published by Microsoft in 2005, and between Age of Empires 2 and this, there came Age of Mythology, which fans of the series generally tended to like, but it wasn't quite the same. We wanted our Age of Empires again. And we finally got it with Age of Empires 3. And with this came some new changes. It was brought into the modern era of 3D graphics, and it actually introduced a lot of changes to the series that some were liked and others not so much. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, this was released in a time when this particular subset of the genre was actually converting to 3D graphics. And so you had games like Warcraft 3, you had the Dawn of War series and such like that all were converting to 3D graphics, and this one outclassed all of them at that particular point, because it added in a lot of features that you wouldn't think would be that big of a deal, but they actually were, because it just rose this up above all the others in the visual department. Sure, the modeling wasn't that great. The textures themselves weren't that great. They did their job pretty well, and they were nice and colorful, which was really, really appreciated. But where this thing's strengths really lie are the implementation of the really nicely done shaders and the physics. They added in the Havoc physics engine, which allowed them to do such things as when trees fall over after being cut down, they'll actually shake the screen a little bit, they'll bounce a little bit, as they well should. And they also have little touches like when you're firing cannonballs, they will bounce, and they'll actually continue rolling into like water and such, and people will go flying when they get hit with the cannonballs. Chunks of buildings will fly off when they're hit with the cannons. All this visual stuff really blends together to create this awesome atmosphere, and it really does set the game apart from the others. And in fact, when you're even like shooting cannonballs at trees, it will knock the trees down and such, so that's cool too. As for the sound design, they did a good job with this too. They kept the idea of each civilization having its own particular voice acting. Like, say, the French actually speak French, the Britons speak a fairly old English. You can basically tell what they're saying, but it's not quite English. So it's kind of awkward, but still. Like, Germans actually do speak German this time around, so it's actually stuff like that. And it's all pretty well done. That said, I do think that some of the voice acting is a little bit overdone. They kind of went a little bit on the cheesy side at certain points, but it's no big deal. Music is pretty good. It's not up to snuff with Age of Empires 2, that's for sure, or even the Conquerors, to be honest with you. But it does fit the game pretty well, and it's some nice music that does kind of get you into this empire building mood. And the sound effects themselves are actually really nice. They all sound exactly like they should. I mean, guns sound, depending on the type of gun. I mean, like if you're just got your musketeers or something, they sound like basically muskets should, whereas cannons actually sound nice and beefy and powerful. And so all this kind of stuff really does blend together to create an awesome atmosphere to the game. But what really matter here are the story and the gameplay. Yes, I did just say story, because this is a story-driven campaign following the Black family and their exploits in the New World. Starting with Morgan Black, who is one of the Knights of St. John defending Malta against the Ottoman invasion. And after the siege of Malta, he ends up going to the New World and fighting against the Spanish, basically, for control over the Fountain of Youth. Here's the stupid part about this. They actually make the Fountain of Youth out to be a real thing that gives you the power to live longer. That should never happen in Age of Empires. That's just idiotic. I'm sorry. It is. It's stupid. And the storyline itself, because it revolves around that, ends up just becoming incredibly ridiculous. It's not very well written. It's not entertaining in the least. Half the time you're just sitting there like, this is stupid. Why do I care what the storyline is? But the campaign's gameplay is actually pretty solid. It introduces you to the game, it shows you how to play it, and it gives you this cool way to figure out how you want to kind of play it. But there's a lot of variety there, but the storyline just brings it down horribly. So then you go to the rest of the game. Now, you do have 8 different civilizations to choose from, which are the Spanish, British, French, Portuguese, Dutch, Russian, German, and Ottoman civilizations. Yes, Ottomans. Kind of weird, but anyway. And they all play fairly differently. They all have their own unique units, and there are actually several unique units per civilization this time around. So instead of just being stuck with one at a castle, you actually have several, and they're spread out throughout the buildings that you produce them in. There is no longer a building that produces your unique units. It's basically everybody gets the same buildings, but the building that takes place at the castle is now the fort, and it will produce pretty much all of the units you have access to, so that's pretty handy. You also have simplified resource gathering. They removed the stone resource altogether, which I was perfectly fine with, because that did seem kind of extraneous. But they also simplified the way you gather the resources. In previous Age of Empires games, you would send your gatherers to a certain resource point. They would whack at it for a while and then come back and drop off their resources, then go back, and so on and so forth. And now, when you send your gatherers up to a resource point, they'll just sit there and whack on it and until that resource point is exhausted. And you'll just get a steady stream of that particular resource. I actually prefer this, because it allows you to focus more on other strategic elements of the game than just getting tons and tons of micromanagement out, because that did become kind of a problem in Age of Empires 1 and 2. But it is a pretty different style of play, and I know a lot of people that were fans of the previous Age of Empires games didn't like that change. But I actually did. It was kind of cool, actually. You also get access to several different tribes of Native Americans, like the Lakota, the Inca, the Cree, and so on and so forth. And what you do is you build a trading post at their little settlement, and then you can get access to a special unit that they give you, as well as some special tech. And so that's actually pretty handy. It kind of changes the way you play. It gives you mercenaries, basically. And so that's kind of cool. You also get this new feature called Home Cities, where as you play the game, you will gain experience points by doing things like killing enemy units, or if you you actually get a trading route in each map now. And these trading routes have several different points where you can build a trading post, and as the caravan thing passes, because it can be 3 different things. As the thing passes your trading post, it will actually give you a certain amount of whatever you have selected at that thing, whether it be experience or just a resource. And so that changes the way you play too. And so they added in all these new gameplay elements. And the biggest one, though, is the home city, where when you're gathering experience points by doing all these different things, your home city will level up, and that could be something like, say, Berlin or London or something like that, depending on what civilization you're playing. And when your city levels up, you get access to different cards. And when you get these cards, you can basically call in reinforcements, like you can send in a certain amount of troops, or you can send in more resources, or like a fort wagon that allows you to build a big fort that's the ultimate defensive fortification thingy. And all these cards you just choose your deck as you're playing the game, and as your city levels up, you'll get access to more and more cards. And that changes the way you play completely. Some of the civilizations, like France, for instance, seem to get really overpowered as you get really high level in your civilization's home city level, and so that becomes a pretty big problem. If you know what you're doing, you can really max out your civilization, and if you go online, for instance, you'll find that you'll get your ass handed to you all the time, because these people will just know exactly what cards to play, when to play them, where to play them, etc., etc., so on and so forth. Like, I know one guy who actually can take on like 7 people at once and win. So it's pretty ridiculous. But it's a cool idea, and it actually works out pretty well for the most part. And each of the civilizations does play pretty differently from all the others, so there is quite a bit of variety there. Things I don't like, however: online is horrendously laggy and very unstable. I mean, the lag is always a problem in strategy games, but the instability part arises from well, half the time it won't even connect to the games I'm trying to join, and if it does, then it has all sorts of problems, and often it'll just disconnect me in the middle of games. It's pretty bad. LAN play is usually fine, but online is just god-awful. So, multiplayer is kind of out of there. The single-player skirmishes that you used to be able to have in the Age of Empires 1 and 2 are back, but they're done differently. You don't have that random map generation anymore. It's now only specific maps that are laid out a certain way. And a lot of AoE fans were really annoyed with that. I mean, you can make your own maps still, but it's pretty annoying when you've got all these maps that are just preset and you don't get to have any variety among them, basically. So you just pick the one you always want to play, and it just kind of gets boring after a while, to be honest with you. Whereas Age of Empires 1 and 2 had the randomly generated maps. You were always kind of kept guessing as to what your map was going to be like. So that's a little disappointing, but it's not a huge deal. I mean, you can still pretty much just go through everything and enjoy it just as you would the other Age of Empires games. But that said, while it is a solid real-time strategy game, while it is a fairly solid Age of Empires game, it's very different from the previous two games, and that's kind of both its major strength and its major downfall. Because the old fans were kind of like, this is pretty bad, that we want all this stuff back, and people who are going into the series will find that it's a lot more accessible, and it's got a lot that sets it apart from other strategy games out there. But still, I actually had fun with this. Even though I am an old-school Age of Empires fan, I really did enjoy Age of Empires 3. I didn't have as much fun with it as AoE 2, obviously, but it was still a blast to play. I give it a 4 out of 5. Thanks for watching.